all you cool crooks and killers, welcome back to True Crime Now, your #1 source on the internet for daily true crime videos. Today, we are counting down the top 10 crimes committed by children. Number 10. A 4-year-old murderer. Yep, you heard that right. Just 4 years old. In 2012, a little boy in Saudi Arabia asked his father to buy him a PlayStation. When his father refused, the young boy began to get upset as they left the store. When they arrived home, the father of the young boy was removing his jacket and placed his pistol that he normally carried on the table. The furious little boy grabbed the gun when his father wasn't looking and shot him in the head without hesitation. Many cite this 4-year-old as one of the youngest intentional killers of all time, although the boy was not old enough to be convicted of a crime. That's so young for such a serious crime. If you think a 4-year-old murderer is horrifying, just wait until you hear about the crime the young child committed in our #1 spot. Number 9. The first ever school mass shooting. An event that is often cited as the first mass shooting of a school in the United States was a shooting spree that took place in January of 1979. On this fateful day, the children of Grover Cleveland Elementary School would be terrorized by 16-year-old Brenda Spencer. Over the course of the morning, Brenda would end up killing the principal and the janitor and injuring a police officer along with 8 elementary school children. Once arrested, Brenda was asked why she would commit such a horrible crime. Her response? "I don't like Mondays." This infamous quote would set off a media frenzy that led to a song by the Boomtown Rats, a book, a movie, and several television series appearances. Brenda pled guilty to all charges and was sentenced to serve 25 years to life in prison. Since she was tried as an adult, her sentence was much harsher. So far, all her attempts at parole have been denied. She will be eligible for parole again in 2021, although it is likely she will remain in prison for the rest of her life. Number 8. A 6-year-old murderer. In 2000, at a Michigan elementary school, a 6-year-old boy would bring a pistol and a knife to school with him one morning. The reason? Revenge. This young boy had attempted to kiss his 7-year-old classmate, Kayla, day before and was rejected. Young Theo did not take this news well and decided he was going to take action. The next morning, armed with his 2 weapons, he set out to look for Kayla. The knife was taken away from him by a teacher, but he was never searched. When he approached Kayla, he stated, "I don't like you," and shot a single bullet right at her. The bullet hit several vital organs, and despite the doctor's best efforts, she was declared dead at the hospital the same day. The 6-year-old boy was too young to be charged with murder by Michigan law, and the man who left the gun within reach of a child was charged instead. Number 7. 15-year-old murders younger brothers. In 2013, a young mother of 3 boys returned home from work to find an unimaginable scene. Her 2 youngest children were dead in her home, stabbed to death numerous times. They were ages 4 and 10 and adopted by her and her husband, who was deployed in the military at that time. To make matters worse, her eldest son was nowhere to be found. Police sent out an alert for the teenager and began to search for him, fearing he was in danger. Fortunately, or unfortunately, they found him a short distance from his home, covered in blood. He quickly confessed to killing his adopted brothers and was taken into custody. The family's information was protected since all involved were minors at that time of the incident. The boy was convicted and sentenced to serve 15 years to life in prison. He will be transferred to an adult facility this year when he turns 21 to serve out the remainder of his sentence. Number 6. 12-year-old girl savagely stabbed classmate. 2 12-year-old girls in Wisconsin would brutally stab one of their own classmates in 2014. Anissa Wire and Morgan Geyser would later claim the attempted murder was not their fault and that they wanted to please the imaginary slender man in order to save their own families. Fortunately, the classmate survived and was able to implicate the other 2 girls. Shockingly, both girls were tried as adults at the young age of 12. Both pled guilty to intentional homicide but denied responsibility due to mental illness. Morgan was sentenced to 40 years in a psychiatric institution, and Anissa received a 25-year sentence at a similar facility. Morgan and Anissa will be 37 and 52 respectively before they will be able to get out of prison. We're halfway through our countdown, and we've covered some scary kids so far. Let us know in the comments if you know of a case where a kid has committed a crime. We might include it in a future video. Number 5. 17-year-old assists in suicide. A case that was widely covered in the media was that of Michelle Carter in 2014. At the age of 17, she had encouraged her then boyfriend via text message to commit suicide by inhaling carbon monoxide from his vehicle. Unfortunately, her persistence in encouraging the young boy to end his life proved successful when police found him dead in his truck the next morning. Michelle listed over the phone until her boyfriend stopped responding and never alerted the authorities of his death. With the text messages serving as evidence, Michelle was convicted of involuntary manslaughter and sentenced to a rather short time in prison of 15 months. She is the first person in the US sentenced to prison for encouraging someone to commit suicide, even though she was not present at the scene. Number 4. 14-year-old sets mother on fire. In 2012, a 14-year-old named Daniel Bartlam shocked his community when it was discovered he had murdered his mother in the most savage manner. The young boy, seemingly obsessed with crime documentaries, decided he wanted to try some of what he had seen on TV for himself. He first bludgeoned his mother to death with a hammer, before later setting her body on fire in hopes of destroying any evidence that would lead to him. This would prove unsuccessful, and the 14-year-old would be sentenced to life in prison. Since he was tried as an adult, the state was not required to keep his identity private, and he would become one of the most notorious child murderers in the US. Number 3. 11-year-old shoots pregnant stepmother. In 2009, a brutal murder took place in the most unexpected place, a home with a family expecting a new baby. 11-year-old Jordan Brown was not excited to have a new stepmother, nor was he excited when he found out she and his father were expecting a baby boy together. He became enraged when he found out the baby would be named after his father and decided to take action. Early one morning before school, Justin stole his father's gun, shot his 8-month pregnant stepmother, and then proceeded to board the school bus and go to school as if nothing had happened. He was later convicted and sentenced to a juvenile detention center until he was 18. While in custody, he was actually able to graduate high school and get accepted to a college. He was released in 2016 at the age of 18 against the wishes of his stepmother's family, who believe he is still incredibly dangerous. Number 2. 10-year-old murderers tried as adults. Believe it or not, this horrific crime was committed by two 10-year-old boys. Robert Thompson and John Venables kidnapped a 2-year-old boy from a grocery store in 1993. They led him to a canal where they proceeded to torture the toddler. They dropped him on his head, put paint in his eyes, and even force-fed him batteries. Eventually, they fatally injured the young child after dropping a 22-pound bar on his head. The 10-year-olds were tried and charged as adults for murder and several other crimes. They were sentenced to an indeterminate amount of prison time due to their young age. In an unprecedented turn of events, the two boys were given new identities and released from prison upon turning 18. Venables has struggled since their release and has been convicted of numerous other crimes, including possession of child pornography. Venables has even had to change his identity twice because he keeps telling people his real name and story. Thompson has done much better for himself, and little is actually known about him and his new private life. He has not committed any crimes since his release and is in a long-term relationship with a man who knows his real name and backstory. We have made it to our number 1 pick, and I can't imagine what we have in store that can top some of these terrifying kiddos. Let us know what you think of this video by giving us a thumbs up. Are you ready for number 1? 11-year-old serial killer. Mary Bell was just 11 when she became a convicted serial killer in 1968. In early summer of this year, a 4-year-old's body was found with no obvious signs of violence. With no evidence to go on, police chalked it up to an accident. But just 3 weeks later, the body of a 3-year-old was found strangled to death with numerous stab wounds and missing hair. When questioned about the murders, Mary became evasive and refused to answer any questions. She would make up lies about seeing other kids commit the murders and describe details of the crime that had not been made public. She knew how both boys died, and the murder weapon involved leading police to target her as the number 1 suspect. Mary was convicted on 2 counts of manslaughter, and due to her unstable mental health, was sentenced to an indeterminate amount of time in prison. In 1980, the now 23-year-old was released from prison for good and given an entirely new identity. There you have it, the top 10 crimes committed by children. Do you think we should do a part 2 to this video? Let us know in the comments. Make sure you subscribe and turn on that notification bell, and until next time, don't be embarrassed to sleep with the lights on.